The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus told his disciples a parable about the necessity for them to pray always without becoming weary. He said, "There was a judge in a certain town who neither feared God nor respected any human being. And a widow in that town used to come to him and say, 'Render a just decision for me against my adversary.' For a long time, the judge was unwilling, but eventually he thought, 'While it is true that I neither fear God nor respect any human being, because this widow keeps bothering me, I shall deliver a just decision for her, lest she finally come and strike me.' The Lord said, 'Pay attention to what the dishonest judge says. Will not God then secure the rights of his chosen ones who call out to him day and night? Will he be slow to answer them? I tell you, he will see to it that justice is done for them speedily. But when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?'" The Gospel of the Lord. As I mentioned, we are commemorating actually 4 women saints, each one of whom is very interesting, but I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail. Margaret of Scotland, who was a queen, whose ancestry could be traced to a number of places throughout Europe. But she ended up as the Queen of Scotland. Then Gertrude and Mechtilda, who were mystics and nuns in the Middle Ages. And finally, although I don't see any of our Franciscan priests here, for anybody who is a Franciscan among us, a very, very special person is celebrated today, and that is St. Agnes of Assisi, who was the sister of St. Clare, also a mystic and a poor Clare in the monastery with her sister Clare. So, what do these women have in common? Well, the male-dominated church has tended to be rather slow in really recognizing the contribution of women to the spirituality of our church, the spirituality that we have inherited. 3 out of the 4 were nuns who were mystics. One, however, was in a unique position because it is extremely difficult for a queen, one who is within the framework of worldly power and worldly wealth, and has just about everything that in her time one could want at her command, at her disposal. It's much more difficult, I would think, for somebody living in that constant state of temptation to achieve the kind of open emptiness and receptivity to God's love poured out through us into the poor than it would be, let's say, for someone who is living a full-time religious dedication and commitment. So among those, one might say that Queen Margaret might be the greater of the bunch because the rest were, let's say, professionally religious, and she had much more difficulty living in a tempting world of power and wealth to empty herself and allow God to work through her. Now, what we have in the gospel today is Jesus very emphatically telling us what God is not. God is not like the judge who has to be bribed or coerced into justice. God is rather the one who seeks our good long before we are even aware of what our good is. And so all four of these women recognized the way that God works in pulling us away from our concerns with the things that like to captivate our attention, captivate our interest, and even captivate our commitment, pulling us away from those things so that we may render our commitment, our attention to God alone. That's why Jesus says, will not God secure the rights of his chosen ones who call out to him day and night? Will he not make himself present to them? But then Jesus asks, will I find faith when I return? And these four women, each in their own way, demonstrate to us that that faith is embodied in love and self-giving on behalf of others. And so they are a great patron for us. Let's pray for their intercession for us today, that we may imitate their openness to the work of God among us. St. Margaret, whose name means a pearl, and Gertrude and Mechtilda, and finally Agnes of Assisi.